You are Locked On Mets Postcast. Part of Locked On Sports New York on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Francisco Lindor has another Mets moment, and the New York Mets, for the first time, get a chance to celebrate a postseason clinch at Citi Field, and they are headed off to the NLCS for the first time since 2015. Welcome in to this victory edition of the Locked On Mets Postcast. I am your host, Chris Schubert, and we have a lot to get into. We are going to celebrate together as the New York Mets will wait to see who they play in the NLCS. Could be done as early as tonight, but they will be moving on to the National League Championship Series for the first time since 2015. You're going to want to pay attention to this, Mets fans. This episode of the Locked On Mets Postcast brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Let's get in here, everybody. Let's celebrate. Let's gather around a victory edition, a series clinching edition of the Locked On Mets Postcast as the Mets defeat the Phillies 4-1. They win the series 3-1, and they are headed off to the National League Championship Series. And in a season, in a last 10 days or so, that have been about moments and have been about big Met moments in all-time history. Francisco Lindor's home run against the Braves in Game 161 of the doubleheader on Monday. Pete Alonso's home run against Milwaukee. The rallies that this team had in this series against the Phillies. We've got a new one. We have a new moment atop the list, and that is Francisco Lindor hitting a go-ahead grand slam in the sixth inning of this baseball game to put the Mets in front 4-1, and that was the final dagger for this Philadelphia Phillies season as the Mets move on and go on to the NLCS. And just like it was yesterday, just like it was the last time we did a postcast, the sixth inning is where this game was won and lost for the New York Mets, because we don't get that moment for Francisco Lindor putting together another memorable Met moment. And can we just talk about how calm, cool, collected Francisco Lindor is? This guy hits big home run after big home run, and it looks like he's playing beer league softball with buddies and just rounding the bases. I think I've seen more energy with some of my friends at beer league softball than I got out of Francisco Lindor in what is easily the biggest home run he has hit as a New York Met, after already hitting the biggest home run of his career as a New York Met just about a week and a half ago. This has just been an incredible run, an incredible moment, and just to see him under the lights, under the Citi Field atmosphere, to be that calm, to be that cool, to be that collected. He's the MVP of this team. I don't know if he's going to win the MVP of the league. That 50-50 season by Shohei Ohtani is certainly going to make it difficult, but you are not going to be able to tell the story of the 2024 New York Mets without talking about the MVP of this team. And the MVP of this team is Francisco Lindor. I mean, guys, I don't know if we realize just how close we were to not having Francisco Lindor at all for this run. I mean, that back injury is very serious, what he's going through right now. They talk about it on the broadcast. 45 minutes worth of rehab and work before the game just to get himself ready. And he comes through with moments like that. There is not enough good things to say about what Francisco Lindor means to this franchise, what he means to this team, what he means to this city. And if there was anybody, just like yesterday we talked about Sean Manaea, if there was anybody that the jury was still out on whether or not this team could win with this starting pitching, if there is anybody, if the jury is still out on whether or not Francisco Lindor and that contract and that trade was worth it, there's nothing that Francisco Lindor is going to be able to do for you. This guy is special. This guy is a star. This guy is a player. This guy is a superstar, and he's coming through in the biggest moments for this team. That sixth inning is where this game turned, and we don't get that moment. We don't get that big soliloquy from me about Francisco Lindor if it is not for what this team did in the sixth inning pitching-wise. They let Jose Quintana go out there for the start of the sixth. He allows the immediate runner to get on. I believe he faced Harper in the sixth inning. Listen, folks, it's all a blur. We've got the notes, but as you know, when we do these series of winning versions of the Locked On Mets postcast, we don't really go by the book. We're going to try, but we don't necessarily go by the book, and we'll get to your thoughts and your comments and your reactions here as well. But they turned over to Reed Garrett. Garrett is able to get part of the way there, and then super reliever David Peterson, and we'll get into the bullpen a little bit later on here in the show. But David Peterson and Reed Garrett combined to get them out of the jam, and they don't score. They get a leadoff man on in Bryce Harper with a double, and they leave him stranded out there. That's where the game was won. I texted a buddy, and I said, if they don't allow a run, and I wish I could show you without giving away who the person was or doxing them online, even though they're a good friend. I do some podcasts with them, but I still don't want to do that to them. I texted that buddy, and I said, if they get out of this and they do not allow a run, the New York Mets are winning this baseball game. They will win this game if they get out of this jam. And they got out of that jam, and immediately in the 6th inning, they got more traffic on the base paths. And when you thought that maybe it was going to go the way the rest of this game was going for them, because let's talk about that real quick. Let's talk about this offensive performance as a whole, because it was weird. It was a up and down performance from this team. The 1st inning, bases loaded with 1 out, back-to-back strikeouts, they don't get anything. The 2nd inning, they load the bases again, nothing. The 3rd inning, they get even more traffic on the base paths, nothing. The first clean inning that the Phillies were able to have in this game was the 4th. That was the first bad inning for the Bats. Then in the 5th, they get 1st and 2nd with nobody out, and they still don't score. And it just felt like, I look at these games. Obviously, I've got my fan hat on it, as you can see with the Mets cap on tonight. I am watching these games through that lens, but I'm also trying to craft the narrative, trying to craft the story that we're going to tell here on the postcast. It's why we have the book. It's why we take the notes, right? Is because we're telling a story. We are trying to tell you everything that occurred during this game. And I thought it was really simple. The story of this game is going to be what the Mets have done to everybody else got done to them tonight. They didn't capitalize on the opportunities that were given to them. The other team did, because up until that point, the only run that the Phillies scored in this game was they had 1 hit, and it was a weak ground ball to Mark Vientos, who kind of bobbles it, can't get the throw to home. Don't know if he would have gotten it even if he fielded the ball cleanly. And that's how they scraped their run across. A double by Castellanos, and then a soft hit ball in the infield drives the runner home on a fielder's choice, and then the error on Vientos. That's it. That's how they got their run in this game. They didn't have any big rallies. They didn't have any big hits from Harper or Schwarber or Turner. They didn't have those big moments. And so to only have 1 run and to have all these opportunities that the Mets had, you just felt like they had missed out. You felt like, oh no, this game is going to go sideways at some point, and the Phillies are going to look up and it's going to be 3-4-0 Philly, and you're going to be like, man, this was a missed opportunity. The Mets should be winning this game. The Mets should actually be comfortably ahead in this game, and all of the pressure should be on to Philadelphia to burn Zach Wheeler, to use Christopher Sanchez, to use everybody to try to keep the game close. That's how this game was trending in the 1st and 2nd inning, but they got no runs across. They showed the graphic. What Ranger Suarez was able to do in the first 2 innings of this game had never been done before. Guy was dancing in and out of traffic in those first 2 innings, and the Mets weren't able to get anything across, but just like they always do, when you count them out, and that 6th inning, I was counting them out again, because they get traffic, they get multiple pass balls to put themselves in a position to have the bases loaded. And it's so weird to me. And that's why I use the word weird to describe the offensive performance from this team tonight, because they did all of the right things to put traffic on the base paths. Great at bats, drawing walks, battling in counts, right? Going down, 0-2, 1-2, but battling back, forcing the pitchers to make good pitches. And then it felt like the moment that there were opportunities to drive in runs, it was a team of desperation. It was a team that felt like they were down 3-0 in a 7-game series, and they had to have this game, and they were pressing, and they were trying to do too much. I mean, Jose Iglesias has been a spark plug for this team. Some of his swings tonight were not very good. Francisco Alvarez had some not so great at bats in this game tonight. Now, we're able to overlook those because of the end result, and we know this team always seems to find a way this year. But it felt like they did all of the right things. They did the hard part. They got it to a point where they had all this traffic on the base paths. They had all of the pressure onto the Philadelphia Phillies, and they just couldn't knock them over. It's like the Phillies were leaning on one leg, and all he had to do was just a gentle breeze would have knocked the Phillies over in this game, knocked them out, and the Mets would have cruised to the NLCS. They just didn't seem to be able to come through in that moment, and that is until Francisco Lindor stepped up in the 6th inning and hit a massive home run and was calm, cool, collected, just had the composure of all composures. I don't know how somebody in that spot has that type of composure. I mean, this guy got booed when he started here. This guy has slow starts each and every year, and the people come out of the woodwork talking bad about Francisco Lindor, and he just keeps his head down, he keeps grinding, and he is an elite baseball player, and it is so much fun being able to watch him play baseball for our New York Mets. We have a lot more to get into from this game. couldn't have started it without discussing Francisco Lindor and the great performance that he had. But it was a start to remember. It was another excellent start from Jose Quintana. So we will get into that here on the other side. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. The Game Time app, you're going to want to download the Game Time app today. They got a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. We've talked about it here on these postcasts before, but a bunch of great features in the Game Time app. We mentioned the Game Time Picks. How about all-in pricing? You toggle this feature on in the app. You get the total up front. No surprise fees at checkout. How about Seat View, a panoramic view of the seats that you are attempting to buy, the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code Locked On MLB. That's LOCKED MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. I have behind me the screen of the Mets celebrating in their clubhouse and everybody giving speeches, and the celebration looks like it is a good one. And I'm glad that we are celebrating here on this Locked On Mets postcast, and you are joining us here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please do us a favor, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you are notified when we go live, because I'm sure you've noticed this already, but we are moving on to the NLCS, that being the New York Mets, which means us over here at the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel, we've got more of these. We've got more Locked On Mets postcasts throughout the entirety of the NLCS, and I've also got you covered on the Jets side of things for football, and then Jay Berman's got you covered if you are a Mets and a Giants fan. He's got you covered on the Giants side of things throughout the remainder of the NFL season. So please do us a favor, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you are notified when we go live. I see everybody in the chat. Yuki, never in my life I thought we would be here, yet here we are, Yuki. 2024, the New York Mets are one of the final 4 teams standing in Major League Baseball. It is an exciting time to be a Mets fan, and it is an exciting time to be here with all of you doing these postcasts. But let's give flowers where flowers are due, and that is to Jose Quintana, because I thought, and I had listened to a lot of people who cover the Mets every day talk about the way the Phillies were going to manage this game and the approach that they were going to take. It was going to be all hands on deck. Probably everybody but Aaron Nola, right, was going to be available in this game. And so it was going to be a case of, you got to win the early innings. If you are able to put the pressure on the Phillies and get them on the back foot and get them using the guys that they probably wanted to save for a winner-take-all Game 5, then you could really flip the script and really have all the momentum. You still had the momentum coming into this game, being the team up 2-1, being at home, feeling good about the way your team was hitting, but you could really skew the momentum into your favor by winning those early innings, taking an early lead, taking their big bats out of it, getting the Citi Field crowd into it, because that was the key to this game, right? You get the Citi Field crowd into the game early, and that felt like it would have been an overwhelming task for this Phillies team. And you got the pitching side of this, right? Jose Quintana threw up zeros, right? Great first inning against the big 3 for this Philadelphia Phillies lineup. Did well in the second and third. And it wasn't until the 4th where the Phillies got that run across. The first 3 innings, Jose Quintana did his part. He put up the zeros that you needed to have early. And again, based on the way the game script worked, it just, the results weren't there. You got the 3 innings from Jose Quintana to put up the 3 zeros early. And in those first 3 innings, traffic jam after traffic jam after traffic jam. I thought I was, on the LIE trying to go home with the traffic jam that the Mets were putting up there on the base paths. They didn't get any runs across the board. That's it. They just didn't get any runs across the board. And so from a game script perspective, it kind of went the way you wanted it to go. Jose Quintana throwing up zeros, the Mets trying to get an early run across the board and put all the pressure on the Phillies. They just didn't do the final part. And so credit to Jose Quintana for battling down and giving this team 5 innings of 1-run ball. And again, they showed the stats on the broadcast when he took the mound. Since August 25th, he's made 7 starts, 4-1 with a .64 ERA. And tonight, he delivered once again. You saw what he was able to do in that Milwaukee game in Game 3 of the wild card series, and you saw it again tonight in a decider for the New York Mets. He has come up huge. He's been a veteran presence. He doesn't wow you. It's not stuff that's going to wow you. It's not 98. It's not 99. It's not 101 like Edwin Diaz threw on the last pitch of the game. And trust me, we'll get to Edwin Diaz here at some point. But it's effective, and he just knows his stuff. He knows where he can locate all of his pitches, and he knows how to work to these excellent hitters in these opposing lineups. And it's not like he's facing a bad team. He's facing a National League East champion, the best record in the National League. I mean, that's a good team that he faced tonight. And for the first, 4 or 5 innings of this game, he kept them off balance and allowed the Mets to stay in this to the point where they were able to break through in the 6th inning in a big way, and they were able to hand it over to the bullpen. And let's talk about the bullpen, because I think that's the one big takeaway that we had that's a negative from this game. And there aren't a lot of negatives as the New York Mets go to the NLCS for the first time since 2015. And that should be the big takeaway. That should be what we celebrate. But moving forward, and I'm sure this will be a big talking point on the Locked On Mets postcast or the Locked On Mets podcast with Ryan Finkelstein. So we'll just touch on it briefly here, just in isolation of tonight's game. It is very clear to me the relievers that have earned the trust of Carlos Mendoza in the postseason, because I think it's different than the relievers that earned the trust of Carlos Mendoza during a 162-game regular season. Because did you notice that when Edwin Diaz immediately found trouble in the top of the 9th inning, who was almost immediately ready to go? I didn't see him throw a warm-up pitch before they panned to the bullpen, and it looked like he was throwing heat. He was ready to go, and that would be Ryan Stanek. Did anybody feel like in the end of July, August, September, when Ryan Stanek was on this team, that you thought he was going to be a high-leverage reliever in the postseason for the squad? I know he had the background in it, but since coming to the Mets, he hadn't had a really great stretch of relief appearances. Yet he's earned that trust, because in the postseason, man, if you can throw gas with some command and you have just one other offering that can keep hitters off balance, you can be special as long as you can command your fastball. And Ryan Stanek has that pedigree, was a setup man in Houston all those years, has life on his fastball, and you have seen very early that he has become a trusted member for Carlos Mendoza here in his first time managing in the postseason. You've also seen a guy that didn't make any relief appearances during the regular season become a part of that trust tree, and that being David Peterson, because Kodai Senga comes back. So now you have Kodai Senga as a member of this rotation, probably your game 1 starter in a opener type capacity, although he might go 3 or 4 innings in that game 1 start. But you have him, you have Sean Manaea, who's the other ace of this team, you have Luis Severino, and you have Jose Quintana. Well, that opens you up to have David Peterson and Tyler McGill in the bullpen as super relievers, multi-inning bulk guys, kind of the Jose Budo role. And Jose Budo's kind of fallen out of favor. And so I thought it was incredibly telling that David Peterson got the trust of Carlos Mendoza, and he got it in the Milwaukee series to close out the 9th inning. And now he got it again here tonight. And I was somewhat surprised that he didn't get a chance to at least start the 9th inning to potentially get a couple of outs. But he turned to Diaz, and Diaz was shaky, did not have his command early, found it late, and was able to get the 3 outs without allowing a run to cross. And so you've seen, I think Diaz is still going to be in there just because his stuff plays so well when it's on, but you need to have other options. And the Mets are kind of slowly building out those other options. It's David Peterson and it's Ryan Stanek, I think, the first 2 guys that could be up as potential closer options, or at least high leverage options late in the game. So I thought it was incredibly telling that Carlos Mendoza had David Peterson immediately ready to go with Reed Garrett, who had another good performance tonight. So he's probably on that short list in the trust tree right now. And then Ryan Stanek was immediately ready to go. So again, another person that you should be keeping an eye on late in these games. I'm looking up at the celebration and Brandon Nimmo talking to the Fox broadcast right now. We will give out the performances of the game. We will wrap up with final thoughts, your comments as well here on the Locked On Mets postcast, and we will do that here in just a brief second. This episode of the Locked On Mets postcast brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about, with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. On Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition stadium cuisine. Luckily, on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's just right for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choices across the U.S., you can go incognito to all your baseball rival cities. Booking.com delivers exactly exactly the right U.S. stay for you, and they can help you book a stay that's close to your home teams or rival stadium, no matter what team you're rooting for this postseason, and we know which one you are. Booking.com can make you a fan of any U.S. city, from hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts to cute bed and breakfasts. Stays, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, booking.yeah. Performances of the game and final thoughts here as we wrap up this edition of the Locked On Mets postcast. And like I said, make sure you are in the podcast feed, the Locked On Mets podcast feed. If you're listening to us there, I'm sure Ryan Finkelstein will have even more big picture, 10,000-foot celebratory views of the New York Mets going to the National League Championship Series for the first time since 2015. And we know how that season ended. We know it ended with a trip to the World Series, although a disappointing one. And I'm sure this team will very much want to some different players on this team, obviously, but will want to write a different story than that team in 2015 did. They will want a different ending. And Tony in the chats is reminding me of the 73 pennant run. And now, Tony, I don't want to age you here, and I don't want to make you feel old. Was not alive for the 73 pennant run. Was not around for 86 either. Was not around for 69. I'm one of these younger Mets fans, just turned 30. So it just heartbreak for me. It's just 2000. Heartbreak for me. 2006, heartbreak for me. 2015, heartbreak for me. That's just postseason runs. We can talk about 2007, 2008. So, look, this team is special. They are drawing all sorts of different comparisons to old teams, but this team, and it's somewhat cliche to use this term, but this team has just been amazing. They have been amazing in every sense of the word. Just when you think that things aren't going to go their way, and I'm guilty of it. I said on these postcasts during the wild card series, even the beginning of this series, we're not going to count this team out. This team constantly comes back. During this game tonight, I found myself going, oh no, Zach Wheeler, game 5 on the road in Philly, because it just felt like they weren't going to break through. It felt like when they left all those runners out there. And there was at one point they had more, the Mets had more at bats with runners in scoring position than the Phillies had at bats at all during the game. That's how dominant the Mets were early on in this contest, and they just couldn't get that run across. And again, I just can't. I can't. The image of Francisco Lindor hitting that home run and being so calm, so cool, so collected, and Citi Field going nuts around him. Everybody on the base paths going nuts around him. It is one of those memorable Mets moments that I think no matter how this run ends, no matter what this story ending is, no matter what the final chapter for this 2024 Mets team is going to look like, this team has exceeded every one of our expectations, and they are giving us something that we are going to remember forever. And it is just so much fun to be a part of it. So we will close out with performances of the game. And how do you not start with the guy who seemingly always comes through for this team, who seemingly always finds a way to deliver in the big moments? And that is Francisco Lindor. He did it on Monday in Atlanta. He did it drawing a leadoff walk against Milwaukee to open up the door for Pete to hit that big home run. And he did it again tonight with a go-ahead grand slam in the 6th inning to put the Mets up 4-1. Jose Quintana deserves his flowers as well for the start that he gave the New York Mets. But I want to give some flowers to David Peterson, who has been a starter all of his career, who had been a starter for this team all year long, who has given this team way above average starting pitching that I don't think any of us could have even dreamed getting from David Peterson this year, considering the underperformance in his past, the injuries in his past. And he has come up in a big way for this team all year long. And now in the postseason, he's being asked to do something else. He is being asked to be a very high leverage, trusted lefty reliever for a team that is trying to now win a World Series. And he has come up aces for this team. So you tip your cap to David Peterson, because you're a good teammate. You're going to take the ball. You're going to go out there. You're give the team everything you got, but it's not easy to transition and become a reliever after being a starter all year and to come through and lock in and be ready for that role. But David Peterson has delivered in the best way. Sit back, relax, Mets fans. You have off the rest of the day tonight. You have off tomorrow. You have off on Friday. You have off on Saturday. Game 1 of the NLCS is not until Sunday. We will see whether or not if the opponent for the New York Mets will be the San Diego Padres after their game tonight. They have an opportunity to close things out, or will there be a Game 5 in that series? But celebrate, Mets fans. Enjoy it. This has been a fun run. I'm so glad it is going to get to continue. I'm so glad that we are going to get to have these post shows for at least another week or so. and it is time to celebrate. And I know we kicked off the celebration here with the postcast. My celebration will continue the moment this microphone goes down, but some natural reactions to the New York Mets defeating the Philadelphia Phillies 4-1. Francisco Lindor delivering the big grand slam, his second postseason grand slam of his career, slamming the Mets into the National League Championship Series. And the New York Mets have punched their ticket as one of baseball's final 4 teams. And if it does not feel real yet, just know the New York Mets have a very legitimate chance to win a World Series, and they now are going to move on to the National League Championship Series to try to continue that journey and try to punch their ticket into the World Series. They are just 4 wins away from going back to the World Series for the first time since 2015. I appreciate you guys joining us here immediately after every Mets game on the Locked On Mets postcast. Please make sure if you're new here and you have not done so already, subscribe to us here on the YouTube side of things, Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. Turn on that notification bell so that you are notified when we go live. Enjoy the celebration. Allow it to continue all the way through the weekend. We will be back after Game 1 of the National League Championship Series. Whoever the Mets will be playing, we will be here to break it all down. See you then, everybody.